So you both are okay with being recorded?
Yes, I'm fine with that. Just check the document to make sure it's the correct one. Hey, Mr. Timmons. Yep, that's correct. Yep. Does everybody have the app ready? Great. Please say clear or slow if any of those become an issue. I value morality standards, maximizing expected well-being, the role of the values to benefit the debate that presents the best governmental policy option in 2000. By gaining the policy reasons of practical manner, our demands can become law with the consequences of the required structures of the bureaucracy, technical languages risen by decision makers, policy workers told we can ignore. We need to transfer information to make the public conversation on the frame of social close and making self prefer. My role to validate educational skills we generate from role playing, keep debating and solve the impacts on the role of policy views, problem from multiple perspectives so we can tackle problems of and create tangible solutions, see grassroots movements and collaborative policy changes, better use policy directly solve social issues, de-seed the political conservatives will stop your movement through military action, EQ to advocacy skills, but the only way we can propose policy in the future and make change in role-playing as public actors shatters apathy and political alienation, which is critical to check oppression, middle 2000. By encouraging experimentation, identity, and constructive role-play to help students as discovered every points and overcome stereotypes, this is crucial in public argument, scholars taking up the task of theorizing and drawing critical pedagogy, spending the learning percent of the will do by opening discursive space for students to explore the ideas of public life, stimulated public arguments for education for students of hate some aspects of their political identity advantage. One is dead students that harms deters minorities from medical school, which dooms poor / low-income families they lose access to healthcare. Jimmerfield 427. The high loan burden with medical school can be scarce to underrepresented minority groups or lower income families. It creates a wealthy and healthcare disparities of healthcare accessibility. Finishes in the underserved area. 18.2% of black high school sophomores say they were sorry to be in middle school, but only 6% actually apply for Hispanic school sophomores. 24.4% say they want to go to middle school, but only 6.8% apply for underserved areas or care for 53.5% of minority and 74.4% of non-English speaking patients. 77% of rural U.S. counties are designated as healthcare professional shortage areas. The amount of loan burden means they can much more likely to high rate field that has less higher income. A lot of students pay for loan burdens more quickly. Lack of access to positions disproportionately affects low income patients. An advantage to its death. Trump's opioid declaration will pass in days, but does not have an impact. The plan's key to save 650,000 lives. Clip, June 5th. Trump said he would declare national emergency of the opioid epidemic. There won't be enough. 300,000 people die of opioids. 650,000 people die over the next 10 years. President 300 million will go away from one million to more research could be used to treatment holdback. Lax access to opioid painkillers is will not just declaration can allocate to the millions dollars a year without action by legislative measures. The Republicans' effort to repeal Obamacare plan to make the problem worse by reducing access to addiction sharing and declaring anything an emergency increases attention to it. But this case is audited, not just effective action so far. And doctor shortages are the strongest internal link that's key to stop the opioid crisis. Green 728. The abuse of what you spent through the country for 1404 people died last year. Clients need more treatment options around the therapist, counsel, special addiction, cutting 90 from the 120 countries had too many too few primary care providers. In Jefferson County, near 1% died each day from fatal overdose. Similar deficits in Indiana, but states rank below the national average in number of health professionals for every 1,000 people with substance abuse problem. The shortage are to worsen, and as an Asian, probably a generation of healthcare providers lead the field that was highlighted. Disparage within those jobs are needed the most. A bill would add addiction treatment clinics like the National Service Corps, where for underserved communities with increasing needs of addiction treatment shortages become worse. Their service problems of being competitive for the recruitment of providers. The bill would help alleviate workforce shortages. In the plan text, the United States federal government should make 2 years of national health service compulsory for medical students. To clarify, students would be paid a stipend equivalent to the cost of medical school and additional pay. The plan solves and boosts economy, prevents healthcare cost spikes. Johns 93. It is time to incorporate national service in the graduate education. It's difficult to try to keep physicians and physicians want technology to fund into such an environment, influencing young physicians to pursue higher paying, more affluent areas. The best way to get physicians and entrepreneurs to expand national health service. Core physicians whether to serve 2 years in national service at their advanced level and rank and pay receive a stipend equal to them to 3 years of the cost of medical school graduates. Pursuing special training would go directly 2 years national health service. The cost of paying a national health service would only account for 1.1% of the $1 trillion. Economists would predict the national annual cost of healthcare within the next 3 years. The savings and discouraging serious specialized training combined with healthcare dollars saved will more than offset this cost for a revised system, and the plan solves AIDS addiction. Treatments are highly effective. Lopez, August 1st. Increase access to alternatives, specifically if medication-assisted treatment methods are used to reduce opioid cravings that are currently seen the use of medication to substitute with one drug with another. The danger of whether someone's using much rare use caffeine or alcohol regularly from the drugs transforms into addiction when her use begins hurting someone's function by, for example, resulting in death. Medication-assisted treatment turns into a safer habit. Methadone can eliminate someone's cravings for opioids, even if the patient will have to use the drug for the rest of their life. And medical students are highly equipped. The new curriculum focuses on opioid treatment. CRISPR. 74 medical students have signed a statement. Many students institutes also incorporate CDC guidelines of the curriculum. Students with course in addition to medicine that color neurological effects of opioids and taught how to screen patients for substance abuse risk. So students apply their knowledge in a primary care setting. They're screening patients for substance abuse risk. Colleges are enhancing education on pain management, addiction, risk mitigation. CDC's new voluntary guidelines for opioid prescribing students to take a benefit and manage training the jails directly with low opioids and overdoses ravaging the U.S. workforce. The economy is low. Seltzer 719. Starbucks is having trouble filling its rank. The state chains not only players trying to find chance. The problem is widespread. Why Amazon needs 50,000 workers to fill new positions. The higher rates can distract. The opioid epidemic is contributing to the labor shortage for every 25 to 55 years. American male class will play their another thing. You're not working. You're looking for where there's 5% million job openings of opioids are major contributors to the workforce. Then failure of growth. Then 2015, 2 million Americans some disease order delivering pain relievers. The opioid epidemic is wreaking havoc among them. Those are primary workers intimidated by employees, their employees, and our heuristic means we learn about this here without being it. It won't include dominant norms and is key to their movement workings. So naughty 14. Resistance to governance found in the context within the government rationalization from public interaction with the public with a diverse political space of governance, heuristic and security differentiation rather than overarching demonizations and fostering things of political engagement taken up the core parts of the things against conflict attempt to switch power my position not happening but pessimistic activism and reps focus distracts us from material violence turns abstract alternatives and answers reps focus arguments. To Watt Hale 96. Third, the danger is that academic discourse are more significant to the point of agency political structures are crucial in explaining social action. It should be theorized the reason representational practice being neglected materials for the context in which discursive strategy becomes significant and the affect of politics turns inwards, never spills over at the expense of external action. Scrimshaw 12. The affective turn in politics become non-effective and rebound to image of possibility undermining possibility regional collective act and mobilization affects signals not found in place of resistance significance becomes obscure and ambiguous life of coherence and communicable message marks. It is certain exhaustion with recognized challenge and resistance protests seem to warn out its own disempowerment, adolescence and displacement, compounding apathy and estrangement that's characterized recent discourse on youth and political engagement. Cross eyes.
Alright. Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So how does your Scrimshaw evidence specifically work within the affirmative?
It just says reps focus is bad. That's just like the claim for it. You want me to go through the warrants?
The Scrimshaw one? Yeah, sure.
Okay. So a couple arguments. The first one is that it leads to passivity because it trades off with material action. So the example is like when we're constantly critiquing advocacies, we can never really do anything because we're only critiquing, right? So the argument is simply that we should allow for a pragmatic political arena to be able to enact change and like social. So that means the case would outweigh any representational argument.
All right. And then specifically with your evidence, your Cliff 6.5 evidence of it, like why is that like a credible evidence that is like key to prove inherency if it's like from Vox, which is like an opinion poll?
Oh, 1 second. Let me get there. Where is this in again?
Cliff 6.5 and your advantage 2, the inherency.
Well, it's just like a fact of the matter. So Trump's declaration. So Trump said a while ago that we're gonna like spend all this funding to stop the opioid crisis, but that never happened. The Cliff evidence just indicates that happened, and that was not enough. So the affirmative is needed. I think the fact that it's from like an opinion poll doesn't matter because it's a senior editor specializing in healthcare. He's like a graduate's degree.
All right, and with the plan, when you talk about like additional pay, like what is that additional pay that you like learn in like the second part of your
So plan? Like one argument people make against the first advantage is like African American and like people in like minorities don't go to medical school because it's so expensive. The plan would give them a stipend and a wage.
Do you have any sort of like metric of like what that stipend would be or like how we're like implementing?
I mean, I'm not a policymaker, right? But I'm saying like this advocacy is good. I'm sure if you like read through like the thousands of pages the Solvency Advocate provides, you'll find something. But I'm just assuming it just depends on social circumstance and location.
Okay. And then with your like CRISPR evidence, you talk about like how medical students are highly equipped. However, if like you're talking about like how this like decreases like people's access to healthcare and the status quo, like how is that solved? If we have more doctors, that will like won't solve like more medicine problems, right? Yeah. So the solvency for the debt is not predicated on CRISPR, but rather it's when people have a mind, like a leader in the healthcare, they're more inclined to go to medical school because like they have more interaction with like healthcare. Another like solvency is like the plan solvency where people are paid and so there's no problems like medical costs or medical school costs. And if like your standard is maximizing expected well-being, however, like you focus like on the contention level, like on like the economy, how does that like contribute to like the well-being of like individuals?
I'm confused. Like, the economy is good because like it's good for standard of living. Like, is that the warrant you want?
I mean, that's fine.
Okay.
And then specifically on the underview of the Zanani 14, like when the warrant of the card is like saying that you're like working within government rationalities, like how do you say like you're not like specifically within the state?
No, I'm saying that we are within the state, but we're not defending it. Like, yes, we can read state bad arguments against the app. I would say the affirmative is a stance of pessimistic activism towards the state because we start hating how it like dooms low-income communities to never go to medical school and start proposing policy actions to fix that.
All right, I'll take that.
Does anybody mind if I go fill my water bottle up?
Good. I have 159. I can skip this around.
How much prep time was left?
159. Cool.
Is it all flash and everything? Or email?
Yeah, I sent it already.
What's the order?
It'll be 1 off, then AC.
Okay.
And on the AC level, it'll start on the underview and then bring it down.
Oh, I titled it Octas when it was Stubbs. bad.
Is everybody ready?
Ahmed?
It's different.
I know, but it's like this right document, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Ready, good? All right. You are either with us or against us. The nation exploits fear by forcing compulsory love and patriotism for one's country through an impression of coherence via national service. Our refusal to abide by the required coherence of national pride mobilizes detention and affective reaction in the nation's fear of deviancy. Bodies that deviate from this coherence exercise acts of terror against the state. Terror that creates anxiety for privileged bodies. Terror which justifies retaliation. Ahmed 1. In an act of self-determination, seek to eliminate the source of fear and transform the world into a place where the mobility of some bodies becomes a sign of freedom and civilization. We need to think without assuming that fear brings people together. That fear slid into anxiety, which is repeated and transformed into a fetish object, whereby individuals align themselves with the nation as being under attack. Fear become lived as patriotic declarations of love to be mobilized to defense against terror through the widespread use of American flags, which gives the impression of coherence. Historically signified territorial conquest as well as love for the nation, which displays a sense of witness and forness. The evoked fellow feeling with Americans where we had been attacked under the turning away from fear involves a turning home, could even be understood as compulsory. Fear mediated by love is identification with the nation. Self-love becomes a national love that legitimates the response to terror's protection of the loved other who may be with me by showing sense of being like me. And bodies are divided by feelings and moods which prescribe a task of affect evaluation or a starting point for action. These moods rely on attunement to calculate the condition of our openness to perceive what we encounter. Attunement becomes a form of affective labor as an attempt to preserve expected happiness for bodies to coordinate with others near it. Bodies that aren't attuned to the others around it register as troublesome and a loss of possibility. We are deemed responsible to maintain degrees of labor to the public mood. Attunement is a matter of precedence to becoming citizen. The nation then exiles certain bodies who inadequately contribute to the public mood of patriotism or to their allegiance to the security of the national subject. Ahmed 2. Public mood indexes are used by the governments as a technique for working out which policies would enable their own value. Public mood is defined as the prevailing public sentiment as to what constitutes appropriate matters for governmental attention. Between government and public mood is, of course, many layers of mediation in which words and narratives frame and contest only not only who is the public, who counts as being part of the public, but form of feeling. The citizen can feel themselves to be or not be in tune with the public. This would be or could be citizens must love the nation, its values, law, liberty. All these terms presented as if they were attributes of a national body should really somehow become a nation bonds. The national body then appeared to love diversity at this very same time as requiring those who embody diversity to give their allegiance to its body. It says this is what defines us as a society. To belong here is to believe in these things. Cut the card there. And happiness is a forceful attempt to preserve patriotic sovereignty. It is a gift from the nation, a present to overcome the fear of terror and deviancy and deplete the will to rage. This national unity embodies a sense of happiness that is deemed as a requirement to distract from the fear of the other and to condition camaraderie. Ahmed 3. Feelings can become forceful. Political discourse can turn into tangible things. Politics that direct hatred towards others often presents itself as a politics of love. Happiness, a technique of distraction, was a way of happiness became a gift to the nation, a way of countering a sense of national exhaustion and misery, was a way of pacifying the potency of the sense of rage. Those who do not participate in the national happiness or position is killjoys, alienated from the nation by virtue of not being affected in the right way. A moment of overwhelming joy becomes good for the nation to share in the body of the nation, requires that you place your hopes for happiness in the right thing. And these actions maintain hegemony and become a depletion of will for the other. White patriarchy relies on this promise of happiness. Oppression becomes happiness with circulated images of the happy woman in the kitchen, the thankful woman with lower pay, and the happy slave. Happiness requires that the other renounce desire and will to become complacent with death. Ahmed 3. Imagination is what allows girls to question the wisdom they receive and ask whether what is good for all is necessarily good for them. To be good as girls to give up having a will of one's own. Happiness is associated here with the renunciation of desire. Being happy is a way of not being in trouble. Happiness involves a way of avoiding what one cannot bear. We could describe happiness quite simply as convention, such as to deviate from the path of happiness is to challenge convention. And our nation then tells us that we should be happy. Those that reject the happiness created by the nation are viewed as traitors, as a killjoy. Thus, the alternative is to critically interrogate the resolution in favor of killing the joy of hegemonic masculinity and pride within the institution. The K is thus a first step to incentivize the breaking down of barriers in and outside of the debate space. Ahmed 4. If happiness is assumed as a good thing, then those who are not happy become a killjoy. The feminist killjoy, certain kind of political energy is willing to get in the way of any happiness does not have your agreement. We learn more about emotion. Feelings are blocked. If challenge the rights of others, I might be enraged by your happiness. If I feel it is inappropriate, the means by which emotions flow take us back to questions about how spaces are organized around certain bodies. We can thus redescribe citizenship as a technology for deciding whose happiness comes first. And the debate community places feminine subjects in a double bind. They are continually degraded, yet we are not allowed to discuss these everyday experiences of violence and debate. Scenarios of nuclear war, extinction are deemed as a good form of debate and help construct a space where female debaters are required to be complacent, reading those positions that results in feminine exclusion. Thus, the figure of the killjoy is uniquely good in debate. Eisenberg 12. Debaters experience pushback, especially trying to integrate personal experience in their argument. Large body counts are privilege over personal experience of your own body. Serve to reaffirm rhetoric that equates certain argument choices with weakness, serves to reaffirm hegemonic masculinity. Cut the card there. And thus, the role of the ballot is to vote for the debater that best opens up spaces for us oppressed bodies to assert our will. Every reading of the K exposes a new moment of happiness in every RFD decision and refutation that must be sabotaged for liberation. Ahmed 5. What we read matters to describe what kind of world it takes place when it is given that the happiness of which we speak is good. Happiness gets distributed in all sorts of complicated ways to be bad. Thus to be a killjoy. This is an attempt to give the killjoy back her voice and to speak from recognition of how it feels to inhabit that place to killjoy. As many of the texts I cite in the following pages teaches us to open a life, to make room for life, to make room for possibility, for chance. And debate guarantees 14 minutes of validation for women's voices, which allows for the injection of feminist pedagogy. Barton at 95. Students are subordinated, less likely to value their own abilities to express their voices within debate. Teaching methods rely too much on aggressive voices when we urge students to use more authoritative evidence and less of their own narrative. We give them reason to doubt their abilities to speak and speak for themselves. And on to the affirmative. So first on the underview, specifically on Zanati 14, when he's still using this state. They give too much credence to the institutions. The effect of their middle ground aimed at helping oppressed bodies vanishes in thin air, but the legal walls created stay in place only only totally reorienting our existence in institutions can we ever confront the walls that are constructed. Ahmed 1, the head of human resources removed the decision from the minutes, but it was however put back in the minutes. Policy that does not do anything is a tangible example of what goes on so often. Changing policies is a way of sustaining a direction because these are appointed to do equality and diversity, and working at policies that do not do anything. An institutional wall is not a concrete or actual wall. The walls that diversity workers speak about are phantom walls. In your head, not in the world of policy disappears despite there being a paper trail. A diversity worker ends up exhausted because despite all her efforts, the same thing is still happening. The removal of evidence renders something not evident to those who inhabit the institution. It is as if nothing is there, no policy, no paper. And on the affirmative proper, so specifically with this value of morality and the standard of maximizing expected well-being, if we are maximizing expected well-being, we can expect oppression. That links to the decay that's talking about how we can expect this oppression and this forced complacency with happiness. Then with his role ballot about the best policy option, he's still he's using some form of compulsion. That links to the decay. That's Ahmed 1. And you can prefer my role of the ballot of opening up oppressed bodies because 1, it has pre-fiat education in this round. Secondly, it is more grassroots activism. And third, it specifically solves because the affirmative is not ceding the political by using the state. And 4, it increases advocacy by having something that we can take out of this round. And Mitchell 2000, he says that role-playing shatters apathy. However, he still doesn't role-play correctly. As I asked him in CX what he's defending with the implementation, he's like, oh, I don't know, just check the solvency advocate, meaning he isn't even role-playing as a policymaker. And then on his advantage 1 of debt, there is a plan flaw. There's no specification of what service looks like. Is it building clinics, writing in vans, giving vaccines? This means there is no guarantee that the app will produce a tangible positive impact. We don't know what the world of the app looks like, neither do policymakers. And turn, chilling effect. If the mandatory service is only initiated through going to the field of medical service, this deters people from going to the field. If service can be avoided by pursuing a different career, so health and economic benefits of doctors will plummet for everyone. And specifically on his Cliff evidence, it's from Vox. That is a poll. You can't weigh this evidence. It's from an online blog. This takes out inherency and solvency of the 1AC. No magic to weigh impacts coming off of the AC if the evidence is not credible. And when he increases the economy, specifically, there's no solvency. Providing doctors is not sufficient to solve healthcare issues. What is needed is affordable medicine. The app just sends doctors to tell people in poor communities they need medicine that they can't afford. Don't let them claim they provide evidence. That is severance. Levine 15. It's not unusual for some people to take 5 or more different prescription drugs per day, even if they could afford them. Managing the menu for medicines is a challenge. Not taking medications can lead to unnecessary complications related to medical condition. With the high price of most prescription drugs, it's not surprising that many Americans choose to not fill a prescription or take it as directed to save money. Meaning that the affirmative only is an instance of error replication because they're only providing more doctors, not any more medicine. And onto his underview once more. The reps. It talks about evading impacts of agency.
I assume. Okay, so you ready? Mm-hmm. Is the link that I use the state?
The link is any either you could use the state or you can pick your one. Any form of compulsory service, believing that we owe something to the state.
Can you read me a line in the card that says compulsory service?
Yeah, the specific. Let me get it. Sorry. It specifically talks about. In Ahmed 1, it's the specific warrant of the card. It says the turning away from fear involves a turning home, could even be understood as compulsory. Fear mediated by love as identification with the nation.
So the control of service in the entire document, it said it 5 times. It said it 1 time in a tag of the critique, and then it said it on a bunch of the analytics you made. Mm-hmm. How are these links specific to the 1AC?
Yeah, it's talking about when we have this 1AC, that's upholding the nation, believing that we owe something to the nation.
So it's just
when you're talking about maximizing expected well-being. Okay.
Are there any policies that have helped women in the past?
I'm sure that has happened, but that's not what the K is saying. This K is saying that these policies have perpetually excluded women and excluded minorities by forcing this happiness. That question that you just asked me, it links pretty hard into Ahmed 3 that is talking about when it asks why aren't you just happy? Why aren't you just happy with this reified oppression? Why can't a policy be simply enough? That kind of links even more into the critique, specifically criticizing this depletion of the will, depletion of their agency.
So I understand that. So any endorsement of the state is a bad idea, but are there instances in which the state can be good? For example, was the right to vote a good idea?
Yeah, what you're asking me right now, I'm saying is what is part of what is problematic, because you're saying oh, we have had good things, shouldn't we just be happy?
So what about
exactly the problem of the critique.
What about the affirmative forecloses the possibility to continue passing policies that are good for women? It seems to be we are just helping as many people as possible. We should keep doing that, not that we should stop after we do it once.
Yeah, well, your standard of expected well-being, you're saying we should what well-being we can expect, and the expected well-being as warranted in the critique is oppression, and this sort of complacency with that oppression, meaning that it's probably net worse to vote affirmative.
That didn't answer the question, but that's fine. So the alternative, does this foreclose the possibility of doing the affirmative?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not a pick. That's great. How does a poor woman who is in need of health care access the alternative, and when people give them money, are they just fuck that? I don't have to listen to you, state, and they don't go to med school?
Well, like, that's not really what the K is talking about. The K is saying that, like, anybody can be a killjoy. Anybody could recognize that the state is problematic and that this
So
use
I
of,
could be
like,
a
love
killjoy.
for the nation. Yeah, like, any.
So how do I be a killjoy?
Yeah, that's just, like, saying, like, you, like, trying to kill the joy of hegemonic masculinity and pride. Meaning, like, you, like, vote negative, you endorse these practices.
So the Zanotti evidence in the affirmative seems to indicate that the affirmative is a kind of stance of pessimistic activism towards the state, i.e. we don't like the state. How is that an not example of, like, denouncing the possibility of joy coming for the state, but realizing when we learn about the state, we can enact these types of
that's warranted on Ahmed 1. That specifically talks about how you're giving this credence to them and you're only going to perpetuate these abusive practices that have happened in the past.
Okay. Starting prep. Oh, actually, before that, can you just delete everything you didn't read? Because, like, half the cards were cut. It was jumping around. And can you just, like, I would mark the card where they were cut. Okay. Can I just wait until that's sent out for prep?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have it up?
Not yet. Yeah, I got it. I'm starting now. 550. The order is overview, the case, the critique. I'm reading a bunch of analytics, and I'll go ahead and send that out. Lauren, too good? You seem tired. Okay, good. Oh, also, Mackenzie, I think you said reply only and not reply.
Whoops, I'm sorry.
To the marked version.
Okay. Do you guys want the marked version?
If that comes up later in the debate, then
Okay.
I'll do something.
Okay.
I don't look at it until the end, and if
Okay.
I need to see something.
Okay.
Okay, it's sent. You ready? There's already one reason why you're voting affirmative, and that is the reps focus argument at the bottom of the underview. There was no lip service done to this in the 1NC, so don't prioritize. Don't let any new 2-in-R arguments, because that's unfair. Because otherwise we'd have to respond to a completely 2-in-R disads in the 2-in-R, which is bad for time skew. The case debate. We're going for the death. In fact, extend click 605. The open cards for click 650,000. The dictionary access to treatment is key now. Extend green 720 multiple states prove doctor shortages are causing the opioid crisis. The plan makes med students serve for 2 years. They counsel and get people off addiction, which is empirically worked in states like Massachusetts. This takes out your Stormee deficit because they give the treatments to the people in the first place, so they don't need to afford it. And also means that they build clinic, which also takes out your plan fall argument because there is an implementation mechanism. But first, let's talk about the framing debate. You say you classify your framing. Your first argument is pre-field education. Classify the reps focus arguments. I'll do the extensions later, but this means that you can't weigh your offense. You also say you're more grassroots active. No, the alternative is not a post-field implementation or policy action. It's only discrepancy that happening in the debate round, which means you don't have any solvency for grassroots movement. That means the app is only key for pragmatic change. You say you don't see the political. Well, yes, you do see the political. The state will be like, no, I don't give a shit about confinement skills, which justifies the permutation because it makes sure the state does not co-opt your movement. Extend the role about that you must have a counter policy option. The next you say there's no prerequisites, but no, you can see that there's no deterrence for people serving because they can just serve in other places, which means the app allows more people to serve in other places, which probably is more solvency for the app. The plan fall argument once fiat solves the link because you should just assume the plan internal mechanisms to solve into they conduct a different implementation mechanism across. You say I'm not a roleplay, but just because I don't know every single intricacy of the plan doesn't mean I'm not a roleplay. Probably means we need more roleplay because we can learn more about policies in the first place, which flips the lengthy underview argument. And also the Vox stuff doesn't apply to other qualification. He has a graduate's degree and specializes in healthcare. Obviously, this is not good, not applicable because you haven't already counter evidence. The evidence one, you can see that the legality is inevitable because of co-option, which means the state will always be there. So there's no impact to completely rejecting because otherwise it leads to violence. It sends in 1914 that we should start a pessimistic activism towards the state because we start relooking at the joy the state gives us bad, but we can manipulate the state to create good policies and affective policies that allow for a sort of liberation movement, which means we can destroy the state from the inside, which internally links to the critique in outweighs because it means we have some power and authority which avoids corruption. The reps is extend both reps and that has multiple implications to focus on reps because A trades off with the materiality. We start focusing on advocacy, but we start criticizing advocacy, which means whenever create anything material and BU, this justifies the permutation because we can have a political praxis for implementation access. And lastly, that otherwise people will start critiquing feminist killjoy, and that representation is like white conservatives will be like, I don't care about feminism unless you cannot implement the advocacy. So that's bad, especially if you're doing a debate on you don't know the ideologies of every single person. The critique debate. Let me weigh the app and knowledge of the policy option and defense of the status quo when they move within the 6 minutes of the legacy, which was the 1 year research showing engagement in terms of about the best analysis of all the critical amount of data for size 2 scenario plan choose how to engage in policies and naughty 3 don't vote on reps or infinite reps and the 1 you the reps and policies because they can't predict what you reps will go for. And on the role about 1 is self-serving hyper-specific role that moves often and kills such because we never evaluate offense. 2 kills resistance strategy because we're never open to different methods, but you destroy revolutionary potentiality. Also the role about debate, you can see that you can read things about how the affirmative will lead to sexual soul, so there's no unique reason to have a pre-field implication for feminism, the link to be one, the link is not specific, A doesn't have anything about national service in it, B is not specific to the affirmative, the app. If you think the app is a good idea, you should always vote affirmative. And also materiality comes first. One, people don't care about different interpretations of reality, but how one should survive means all things. You're probably going to ask yourself, as a poor black woman can go to mid school, if that is not applicable in the alternative, don't vote on the alternative. The alternative A1, stop pragmatic cross with the Reps argument to the school is Trump is the president, man. He's just gonna increase sexism in the status quo. She's always air affirmative, perpetuate to the affirmative, the alternative, all there into the double line of their child. Either the alternative is strong to the so the incident status quo, and the affirmative is not strong to solve the affirmative because there's barely strength of link and permutation to the affirmative. The affirmative is an instance of rejecting the resolution, rejecting the state and pessimism, taking out their joint fight. The alternative is an instance of a choice. There's a performative contradiction, and you link into yourself because there's no designation between what is joint and what is not.
Alright. What was the perm? I'm taking prep.
Yeah. Permutation to the aft and the alternative, not all other instances, and permutation to the aft.
The order will be an overview at the top of the K, then K, AC. And on the AC, starting on the underview.
Should I flow the overview on another sheet of paper, or is it not that bad?
It's not too bad.
Okay.
Let me get it.
You said A with an overview.
Yes.
And then what came after that?
Then down the K flow, then AC starting on the underview.
There.
Okay. All right. Is everybody ready? All right. First, as an overview, the purpose of me reading this case is to use the resolution to kill the joy both in and out of debate. My opponents attempt to silence the killjoy by asking why we can't just use a policy option because we have had the right to vote before. Our independent reasons as to why Eisenberg 12 and Barton and 95 are inherently true. The discussions we are fostering this round mean something to women in debate and cannot be silenced. Thus, the case free out implications on the harms of complacency within the debate space prove that the case is a prerequisite and must come first. Voting Hague endorses the killjoy and starts the process to challenge debating norms that intrinsically put female subjects in a double bind. Then on the K proper, he makes this argument on Med 1 that's not specific to national service. However, it specifically talks about the duty of when we believe that we owe something to our nation, that we build ourselves behind this compulsory service towards our nation. It's very specific to defending any form of compulsory service that utilizes the state to embody the bodies as one united front. So we can extend Med 1. And then he says this point that he has 6 minutes of the affirmative. He is not able to engage. However, when he reads specific answers on case and second, we've had this debate before last weekend. He was able to engage. And secondly, he's a scenario planning our key. However, the affirmative doesn't even really have a scenario planning because he doesn't even know the context of his own plan. He just says that he's not expected to know his solvency advocate. However, he probably should be if that's what he's planning to articulate as he's saying that policymakers are key. And third, he says no reps. However, his own reps evidence warrants that any form of reps, quote, evades questions of agency, which the critique does not do. We specifically talk about agency. That's Ahmed 4 that says that how when we use the state and we use this form of national service, that's decreasing the will of marginalized bodies, that's decreasing their agency, decreasing their ability to engage, meaning that his reps argument doesn't even link into the critique because the critique is specifically talking about how agency is currently mitigated by the affirmative and it doesn't do anything to solve it, meaning that you vote negative on that argument alone. And then we can extend the advocacy and find that says we have to critically interrogate the resolution and reject this form of hegemonic masculinity that is perpetuated both in the debate space and in the institution as a whole. And he makes the perm to the all and then perm to the af, then the all. However, he cannot perm one. The affirmative is using the state. The warrants of the Zanotti say this. He power tagged it. He said that Zanotti is saying that he's not using the state. However, the specific card say that we're working within the government rationalities. And second, the in-round action is pre-fiat. He asked me why we can't have a policy action when the right to vote is enough. This means that this in-round action is critical to prove how the affirmative links into the K and proves why there can't be a perm because of the pre-fiat discourse levels of the affirmative. And third, there are no net benefits to the perm. He doesn't articulate anything. It's a blippy perm in the last couple of seconds of his speech that prove that there's no net benefits to doing the affirmative. And then the critique, and you can cross-apply the solvency takeouts on the affirmative here. Then we can specifically extend the role of the ballot with Ahmed 6 talking about opening up spaces. This is uniquely key and is net preferable to his framing because one, it mitigates oppression because his is maximizing expected well-being. The expected well-being is the oppression that's warranted in Ahmed 2. And second, because it's unique to the debate, this specific round that's talking about how we have to talk about opening up impressibilities both in and out of round. His is just talking about a policy action that probably won't even happen, meaning we have more real-world solvency. And then we can extend Eisenberg 12. This is the most crucial piece of evidence in the critique that's talking about the pre-fiat operational level of the critique that's saying that we have to focus on rejecting these norms of nuclear extinction impacts and an advantage of death or debt or economic collapse. These are the good forms of debate that feminine subjects are expected to conform to. Eisenberg 12 is saying that we have to talk about personal experiences, that we can't prioritize body counts over individual narratives. This is uniquely key as to why the critique comes first because it's the highest level of debate, because it talks about how we engage in the debate space first. Then on the affirmative proper, specifically on the underview, you can extend Ahmed 1. He just says that legality will always exist, the state will always be there. Then he makes this argument that we can manipulate the state. That is entirely untrue and problematic and links into the K even more. He's saying we can manipulate the state, but one, he doesn't say how we're supposed to manipulate the state or go about to mitigate this oppression. And two, when he's saying that we can manipulate the state, that is agreeing that the state is good, and he doesn't do enough line by line on the critique to prove why the state is intrinsically good, meaning that you prefer Ahmed 1 that's saying that using the state is just a blanket solution will only perpetuate this oppression. And then with his 12th A96 evidence, that's the card that I cross-applied on the critique that says that talks about evading the important question of agency. However, the critique doesn't do this because we talk specifically about agency. And then the critique isn't even passive. We take a stance. That's the pre-fiat implications of how this plays out in the debate space. Then, at the top of the affirmative, with the value of morality and a standard of maximizing expected well-being, we can extend the argument that I made that expected well-being is expecting oppression, and then he just extends his role of the ballot, saying that cross-applying his reps evidence. However, this reps evidence is what is entirely problematic and doesn't even link into the K because the K focuses on agency. I've made that argument a bunch. And then he says the alternative doesn't have any post-fiat solvency. However, the alternative has pre-fiat solvency. That is what we were going for. That is what is most important in the debate space. And then we can cross-apply the arguments I made on the role of the ballot flow and the K to here. Then, specifically with Mitchell 2000, he doesn't go for this argument because he knows he's losing on it. He is not role-playing. He's saying role-playing shatters apathy. However, he inhibits himself from role-playing when he says that he doesn't even know what the solvency advocate is, or he doesn't even know what form of government will pay the institutions, specifically with his plan when he says medical school and additional pay to students. That extends the plan flaw that says, he says, I'm sure it's there. Then we don't have an effective policy. We don't know what will work, meaning that we can just assume that the affirmative won't work because they have the plan flaw. That means we don't really know what they'll do anything because they don't have any sort of implementation, and that proves that he doesn't meet his Mitchell 2000 of role-playing. And specifically on his advantage one of debt with his Zimmerschneid evidence, we can extend the argument that I made about the chilling effect, how increasing doctors won't do anything because it'll just incentivize people from becoming a doctor on their own will, and then which also will turn his own maximizing expected well-being because that decreases people's will. Then on his advantage 2 of death here, we can extend the author qualification argument. He just said that because he's a doctor, he's probably good, but it's still an opinion poll. That means it's still an opinion. It's not based on facts. And he says that the opioid crisis will kill. However, we can outweigh with the impacts coming off of the critique because first of all, of the pre-fiat solvency, and second, because oppression outweighs more than economic impacts that he talks about with debt and this expected well-being, because it outweighs on magnitude and scope and time frame because it's happening right here in the debate space. We have to have these pre-fiat implications because they happen right here in the debate space. And you can extend the Lewine 15 that says the plan won't even solve. So you're going to vote negative on today's round because first of the pre-fiat level that the neg operates on.
I have 50 seconds left. Okay, the order is overview, then the case, and the critique. Overview is very short. Extension class overview. Everybody ready? There are two reasons why you're voting affirmative. One, you've still conceded the rep stats at the bottom of the the 1AC, which means you've still rejected two arguments because you conceded that it causes a time skew if the two not can go for new arguments. It takes on the entirety of the critique, but to focus on representations is battle, do the extension there, and also you just blindly extend so many arguments, but you actually don't give any warrants. So you should always err affirmative on specificity and explanation on this debate. First, we'll go to the underview. Go to the underview. Use your first argument the critique talks about agency, but no, even if the critique talks about agency, this is what we say is bad. That representational focus on agency creates these forms of impacts. You also say the K, the F is a state, but no, this is irrelevant to the question of you reading representation. So extend both of the cards that are focused on representation is bad because it creates a passive action because we always critique things without actually doing anything. This is empirically bad in Congress and empirically bad in the debate space when ideological dogmatism happens and people don't agree with each other. So when people can critique the idea of a feminist skill joins, denounce feminism completely, which turns the entirety of the critique. It might not even happen in future debate spaces, which means the pragmatic focus is the key, which justifies the permutation and is net benefit. And then lastly, we always silence different viewpoints because we always say that their representations are bad, and we always say that which it kills revolutionary potentials and it kills actual method. This is an independent reason to drop things as it was conceded, which always on strength of length and probability. The framing debate on the top of the case, you just say you're pre-gov, but no, you concede that this will lead to co-option because if you don't engage with the state will just say we don't care about your revolution, and then the affirmative, the alternative will never happen, which means a pragmatic grounded pragmatic action is necessarily key because we can manipulate. So that's the Zanadi evidence. Also takes out your manipulation argument because it doesn't matter how we do it as long as we learn how to do it through role playing, which is the net benefits of role playing, which also link turns the critique because we will have good policies in the future. Yes, state may be bad, but there are specific policies that are good, which you concede in cross-things are examples like the right to vote for women. The line by line, you say I'm not a policymaker, but no, I hint. You can see the turn that I should learn more about policy because I don't know the specific advocacy of the plan, which means affirmative is necessary. You say it turns no, you can see that people can go to med school even if because they have role models they can do other community surveys to solve your office and give us a link turn in. You say plan problem, no, you can see that Congress solves they can do an implementation mechanism, and all these are just defensive arguments, nothing to vote negative on. The you also say the Vox argument, no, you can see the guy has a graduate and specialized in healthcare, so he knows what he's talking about. Opinions can be grounded in facts and absent counter evidence. You always err front of the layman evidence. One you conceded that we give them free medicine which solves your deficit. Extend clip 6.5, the opioid crisis will kill 650,000 new addiction active treatment is key right now. Extend Green 728. Multiple states approved doctor shortages are causing opioid crisis, which means the plan is necessary because we need doctors. The critique, the framing issue on the critique is you can see that you can't vote on representation because there are infinite representations in the world of third, which means we'll never be able to prove this is a theoretical reason to not vote negative. It also means you should always vote affirmative on framing. We'll also go for the permutation of material that ways, but you have conceded that we should have a practice grounded in reality and allow for people to go to med school and actually become actual advocates of their advocacy. You conceded that the permutation to the affirmative, the alternative, all their instances, this is the point the alternative is not strong enough to solve the instance that's going, the alternative, or it's not strong enough to solve the instance that's going, which means there's barely strength of link, so you do not vote on the critique. All your arguments against the perm did not apply because it's very specific and it's a double blind. Double blind. Good debate. Good debate. insane.
I love that. I was on a panel with Timmons and Barat once, and Barat was so intimidating. He just kept looking over at Timmons.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I'm about to go on a panel with Abby and Timmons, so
yeah.
it's going to be interesting.
It's a fun panel.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yes, so congratulations for making it to this double octaves. Double octave finals of the Grapevine Classic 2017. The winner of this round on a 2-1 is Westwood RM from... Yes, this one. They gave us 2, so this one needs to go to a different one.
Well, that's for Flight B.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, that's true.
Thank you.
I'll let you guys go first, and then I'll go after. That I know that's weird, but yeah, I prefer you go first.
Sure. I think I just kind of wrote on the permutation here. I just found that absent a really coherent link story that it was really hard to justify a negative ballot. I think just like in a world where they're just kind of winning like DF is like Rizvi evidence is like a form of pessimistic resistance, and they're kind of winning the role-playing arguments in terms of like why like this form of education is good, and we can come up with those strategies. I think is quite convincing, especially in a world where it's kind of like in a world of 2NR, I didn't really hear like an isolated impact debate, which means that in a world where they have like arguments such as like we solve for like 650,000 people, or minorities going into like positions where they become doctors. I just think it's hard to leverage like why those reasons are bad against specifically like why the app engages in any form of like violent institution specifically. I just think maybe like the CX of this kind of was like bad optics. For example, you ask a question like the 19th Amendment was like good, obviously, right? And then like you kind of get away with like saying, well, just like you let her get away with like the framing of, oh, that means that like we're okay. Like obviously there's more reforms that has to happen. I think you should just like stop it. Like we're like, no, that's not the question, right? And I think you should leverage that. Be like, look, in a world we have isolated that the state can be used in instances of reform good, then probably means that there is no like antagonistic nature between the state and like people, which means that like even if they have read arguments that sure like state and abstract theory is bad, does not give, and in a world where they don't have any specific links to the YDC, I think that justifies the probe, especially in a world where kind of like micro-political resistance doesn't spill up and doesn't solve for anything, in a world where you kind of have the straps to decide. I think maybe the 2AR, there is definitely a world where the 2AR could be way more efficient on a couple of things. I think one, start with extending the impacts of the app, go into kind of like the framing of like what does Nadia evidence mean in the context of the app, disrupts arguments to McKinson evidence, then just going right into decay and be like, look, one, they don't have any links here really. B, pretty sure permutation is able to resolve all like deficits of the alternative, and that just makes it a better story. I think maybe the 2NR have to probably, I think even the 1 and C go something beyond just like the state link, so more coherent. And B subpoint would be, I think, impacting it out more and explaining why the criticism probably turns some of the stuff that happens for you to access and unique offense.
Yeah, so I also voted on the permutation double line argument. So there are 3 arguments against the perm. The first is like the AF uses the state, this like Zanati stuff. I don't think that you're definitively winning such a pessimistic claim about the state being always bad that this is like a strong enough DA to the perm. Like if the AF is correct about their advantage scenario, then I don't understand like why necessarily the state is bad, absent some other argument or explanation here. The third argument is no net benefit to the perm, but I just think the net benefit is just the AF advantage. So the second argument is the one that I had to sit on for a while, is this sort of like pre-fiat comes first, and this is where I like sat and thought about this for a while, because it's like, how does this sort of reps focus care about materiality interact with this like care about pre-fiat stuff? And I'm just inclined to think that in a world where A, you don't have a specific response to perm double bind being able to solve at least some of your pre-fiat offense, and a world in which like you've not really contested the validity of materiality being important, just like some assertions about pre-fiat stuff mattering, I'm inclined to say that at least materiality matters somewhat. And in most of these debates, I'm just going to tend to lean towards the perm absent, sort of like more strong arguments for why the perm double bind doesn't solve. So that was like the short version of that. I mostly just like thought about the perm for like 10 minutes and was trying to see which negative arguments I could best line up as DAs to the perm. But since they weren't explicitly done for teams, I'm leaning in your favor.
Yeah, I sat a long time, obviously, and thought about like all the different layers that are going on in this round, and it was really kind of up in the air for either side for me. I ended up voting a negative after I looked at these reps cards that you're reading at the bottom of your argument, as well as your Mitchell evidence. I think that the negative has better access to your Mitchell evidence than you do. The evidence says, where is that? Okay, the portion of your evidence that talks about scholars have the task of theorizing emancipatory and critical pedagogies by opening discursive spaces for students to explore their identities as public actors, simulating public arguments, provide occasions for students to embrace submerged aspects of their political identities. I don't think that that leaves the negative out of it. I don't think that what the negative is doing is anti-political. I don't think that it's not political, right? Just because it is not part of the state doesn't mean that it's not a political thing. So I'm kind of like, you know, in the way that it's weird because like I had to deal with like this framing issue and like the framing argument is what got really weird for me. But I did policy debate for 9 years and I'm still trying to wrap my head around what you guys are doing in LD now. I ended up voting negative on the risk as a link on the, it's not necessarily the representation stuff, because I did read through the representation stuff, and I think your Tooth-L evidence, I'm wondering what constitutes representational practices. Why is the affirmative not included in those representational practices? Like, what is representation? So I end up being like, you know, when you talk about like people dying in your affirmative, right, isn't that a representation of something? So I don't know, for me it just kind of everything became a big pile and I had to kind of sort through a lot of stuff. So I just ended up thinking that reading through the evidence, I had to pick these apart. So I mean, really, I ended up voting negative on a risk of a link, and I think that they access the framing better. Yeah, I think you foreclose those types of discursive discussions. I don't know. I agree with your Zanotti evidence. I get it, but it's like just because you can doesn't mean it will, right? The all-night evidence, I think, indicts that Zanotti evidence a little bit, right? Like just because it would be a possibility that we go in and be pessimistic. I don't think that that's necessarily true. What's going to happen, right? I don't know. It might sound like a huge mess. I judged like 13 rounds of this tournament, so my brain is like a pile of mush. But that's where I ended up.
Thank you for judging.
Thank you.